Chapter 28 of The Ghosts of Tupelo Landing. Chapter 28 is Return of the Rat. "Hey," Lavender said the next afternoon, opening the inn's door. "Come on in." Grandmother Miss Lacey and Miss Lana breezed in. Harm, Dale, Queen Elizabeth, and me followed. The late afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows, casting the floors in red and gold. "The Colonel should be here in a minute," he said. "You've worked miracles in here," Grandmother Miss Lacey said, admiring the dining room chandelier. "The electricity's not hooked up yet," Lavender said, "but she'll sparkle like diamonds when it is." He nudged Harm. "I found out how Red made that old light fixture swing," he added. "Remote control." "Cool," Dale murmured. Miss Lana frowned. "But bad." He added, "Very bad." Harm shoved his hands in his pockets. "Yeah, I'm sorry, Red." Miss Lana popped his arm with her fan. "Red's like the weather. There's no point in apologizing for it." Lavender led us across the room. "Glad you like the dining room," he said, opening a small door, "because the kitchen's a different story." "Oh my," Miss Lana said, stepping through the door. "I'd forgotten." If the dining room sang, the kitchen cried. The dining room stood high-ceilinged and open. The kitchen fought for breath beneath the ceiling so low Harm could almost touch it. A rickety counter ran along the front wall, and a sloping tin-lined sink drained toward the corner of the building. "I don't remember it's been quite this bad," Grandmother Miss Lacey said. I lifted my camera and focused on the grimy windows over the sink. Click. Dingy cupboards lined one wall. An ancient wood stove crouched at the far end of the room, its oven door hanging open, a rack spewing out like a crooked tongue. Click. Dale gingerly opened a cabinet door. "Brown paint used to be cheap." "Ugly is always on sale," Miss Lana said. Lavender dusted off a chair for Grandmother Miss Lacey. "My goodness," she said, sitting. "Can you fix this?" Lavender crossed his arms and leaned against the counter. "The building inspector says we have to tear it out and start over." Miss Lana's face went the color of mashed potatoes. "Start over? How much?" $50,000, the Colonel said from the door. Even Grandmother Miss Lacey gasped. "We need special ovens, freezers, sinks, plumbing." Dale wheeled to me. $50,000? How many pizzas is that? When it comes to math, Dale thinks in pictures. He needs numbers he can see. "This room full, give or take," I said. "Where will we get $50,000? Miss Lana wailed. "Even with Rose booking her tours here, we can't." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why did I buy this place?" "We," Grandmother Miss Lacey said, sounding far away, "we bought this place. And I might as well tell you, it seems I've made some unfortunate investments." Miss Lana gasped. "How unfortunate?" "Very unfortunate, I'm afraid." Dale slipped close to her. "Are you nouveau broke?" She bit her lip. "Not quite, dear," she said, "but I don't have another $50,000 to put into this project. In fact, I've had to borrow to do what I've done. And that's becoming problematic." "Problematic?" My detective's instinct told me her problematic drove a silver BMW. "Filch at State Bank," I guessed. Her eyes swelled with tears. "The Colonel's doing what he can, but I can't imagine where the money for this kitchen's coming from. Or how we'll pay off the inn." "Not pay off the inn?" "You'll rebound," the Colonel said. He used the same tone he used on me when I'd received time off from school for fighting. "You need time to get your bearings in the new economy," he told her. "Time? She's out of time," an ugly voice said behind us. "Anita Filch," I said, wheeling to find Ratface standing in the door. She looked over her shoulder at someone behind her and barked, "For heaven's sakes, hurry!" Flick Crenshaw stepped through the door, and my stomach flopped. "Nice work, Lavender," he said. "We'll enjoy owning this place." He smirked at his little brother. "Red told me you were running with a new crowd, Harm," he said, looking up and down. "Can't say much for your taste." Harm flushed dark as a summer storm. "This would be a good time to say something nice about us," Dale whispered. Harm nodded and took a breath. "Flick, these are my friends, and—" "Meet your future sister-in-law," Flick interrupted. "Anita Filch." Harm gulped. "Miss Lana said love is blind. She never mentioned it being stupid." Ratface simpered and held out a limp hand. "Pleasure," she said. A shivery silence settled over the room. Flick punched Harm's shoulder. "Say hello to my fiancé," the person he's engaged to marry. Harm shoved his hair back. "But I thought you were with that blonde woman, old what's-her-name," he said. "What happened?" "Say hello, kid. You're embarrassing me." Harm stuck out his hand. She grazed it like he had poison ivy and stalked across the kitchen, her stiletto heels clicking against the floor. "Lacey, you haven't returned my calls, so I thought I'd drop by," she said, running a finger along the old counter. "We've been discussing your situation at the bank. Yours too, Lana." Miss Lana watched the way she watches a garden snake. The Colonel cleared his throat. "Miss Filch, I believe Miss Thornton's accountant and I have put something together that will satisfy your bank and—" "Too late," she snarled. "We're calling the note. Pay off the inn in full by November 1st, or my bank takes it. If my bank takes it, the deed will be in my pocket before sundown." "Bet on it." Upstairs, a door slammed. "Nellie." Dale and Harm looked at me, their eyes wide. Ratface tapped her foot. "Are we clear, neighbors?" She said neighbors like a curse. "Which the Colonel says maybe it is." "November 1st?" Miss Lana cried as Nellie padded along the upstairs hall. "That's just weeks away. We can't possibly—" "Pay up or get out," Ratface snapped. Stealthy footsteps headed down the stairs. The Colonel looked toward the sound, curiosity playing like a flame across his face. "Hold it," Harm said, grabbing his brother's arms. "You're talking about my friends." "You'll ruin them," he said. "And Red, too. Red has—" "I know what he has. Keep your mouth shut." Harm looked like Flick had slapped him. So that's it, I thought, remembering Flick and Ratface chatting at the auction. They want Red Baker's money, and they'll take the inn to get it. Nellie crept down the stairs and paused at the foot of the staircase. Dale gulped as Queen Elizabeth sneezed. "Miss Filch," the Colonel said, basting his voice with calm the way he bastes a turkey. "Lacey Thornton's been a customer at your bank all her life. Surely—" Ratface put her hands on her hips. "We're calling the note," she said. A smile twitched at her lips. "There's nothing you can do. But I do think it's nice for an attorney of your caliber to have the skills of a fry cook to fall back on." "A fry cook?" Miss Lana said, putting her hands on her hips. "Uh-oh," Dale said, stepping back. "The Colonel is a chef, Ratface," I shouted, "with the skills of an attorney to fall back on." "Thank you, soldier," the Colonel said. Ratface's beady eyes flickered over him. "Ratface? You let your foundling call people names?" "Foundling?" The Colonel sprang forward. His hands balled into fists, the planes on his face white with rage. "What did you say?" Ratface backed up. The Colonel stepped forward and lowered his face to her level. "You get your skinny little streak of mean out of here. Now, and don't come back unless you have the deed in your hand, Ratface." She scurried to the door, which creaked open for her. "November 1st, she shouted. She stomped out. A wind tumbled leaves across the porch and across the dining room floor as Flick backed away from the Colonel. He stopped to glare at Lavender. "If you know what's good for you—" "I do know. Get out," Lavender said, his voice like a razor blade. Flick marched across the dining room and out the door. It slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Lavender frowned at Miss Lana. "The wind?" he guessed, as Ratface's silver BMW flashed by the window, her headlights playing against the cedars. Grandmother Miss Lacey retreated to the window, panting a little like she'd run in a relay. What a terrible woman! Her voice trailed away, and her knees buckled. "Catch her!" I shouted. Lavender got there just in time. "Miss Thornton," he said, as the tide of frigid air swept across the room. "The hospital," the colonel ordered. "Now!" Grandmother Miss Lacey's shoe clattered to the floor as Lavender rushed across the dining room. Overhead, the chandelier hissed and sputtered like an angry cat. "Stop it, Nellie!" Dale yelled, running behind the colonel. "You'll set the place on fire!" Miss Lana and Dale bolted for the car. Harm and I skidded to the halt at the door, our breath clouding and the ends freezing air. "It's okay, Nellie," I shouted. "We'll help her." "We promise," Harm said. The chandelier crackled, and one by one, every door in the inn slammed shut. It took forever at the ER doctor to come out. "She'll be fine," she said, and a million tight-wound springs inside me gave way. "Thank you and amen," Dale whispered. The doctor looked at Miss Lana. "Are you Lacey Thornton's daughter?" Miss Lana didn't bat an eye. "I am." "We'll keep her overnight for a few tests," the doctor said, leading her down the hall. "I need you to sign." Lavender stretched like a big cat. "Told you she'd be okay." But he looked at us as scared as the rest of us on that putrid green plastic couch. "Excuse me, desperados. I owe the colonel and Harm a call. Mama, too." Dale headed for the phone. "Come on, Dale," I whispered. "We got to work fast." We found Grandmother Miss Lacey dozing in a crank-up hospital bed. She looked fragile as a baby wren fallen from the nest. "Grandmother Miss Lacey?" Her eyes fluttered open. "Mo," she said. "Oh, and Dale." She squeezed my hand. "Don't worry, I'll be good as new." "What did the doctor say?" "You're spending the night for more tests." She yawned. "Don't worry, dear. Doctors always overreact so they can overcharge. Thank you for coming. Perhaps we could talk in the morning." I kissed her face. "I love you," I said, nestling her navy pump by her side. "Me too," Dale said. He leaned over, his lips hovering over her face. She laughed. "The kiss is optional," she told him, giving him a little push. Dale gave her a shy smile. "Miss Thornton, emergency room sofas make you think. If I was you, I'd send out for pizzas every day before I'd spend $50,000 on the kitchen." She sat bolt upright. "What did you say?" Dale turned to me. "Has she gone deaf?" he whispered. Takeout. Dale's brilliant, no matter how much evidence teachers stack up against him. "Dale's right," I said. "The cafe can cater the inn." She beamed at Dale. "You're a genius." "Thank you," he said, very modest. She settled against her pillow as Miss Lana walked in. "Good news," Miss Lana said. "You'll go home tomorrow, if the tests go well and you promise not to get stressed." Grandmother Miss Lacey nodded. "And Lana, Dale's come up with a brilliant plan. The cafe can cater meals until the inn's on its feet. You don't need a kitchen." Miss Lana tousled Dale's hair. "My little businessman," she said. He blushed. "As for my bad news," Grandmother Miss Lacey took a deep breath. "I'm afraid you'll have to do the best you can until I get back." "What bad news?" I asked. "You'll be fine." She lay back on her pillow. "I'm broke, Mo. By now the news is all over town." And that's the end of chapter 28.